Hello and welcome to Eastern Horizon. This is Malika Yubsambul. Russian President Vladimir Putin is on the visit to China to meet Chinese President Xi Jinping. So, the visit, how important is this visit? And because this visit was after the visit of the US President Donald Trump. So, to discuss this about the importance of this visit, I have joined by Victoria Panova, Dr. Victoria Panova. She is the head of the Brics Experts Council of Russia. She is joining me from Moscow. Thank you very much, Victoria.
Hello, hello. Good to see you.
So, how you see, I mean, that this visit, especially the timing of this visit after the visit of Donald Trump, and then right now, Vladimir Putin is here in Beijing. So, how you see the importance of this visit and how you would like to elaborate it?
Definitely. And if you look at all of the media, they cover, I think that's the first thing they start with. They say, oh, it's less than a week that Trump has left the soil of China. And now we see Vladimir Putin. And definitely what it shows is the stance of China as a global leader when Xi Jinping, he hosts, two global leaders in a row. But definitely, when we look at Putin's visit, I don't see much connection because when we look at it, we know that the details and let's say the agreement on the visit was already done yet in February of this year. So it's
Mhm.
not like Putin decided to come after he saw Trump arriving in Beijing. And we know that this particular visit of Trump was not clear that it would happen, especially with the war against Iran, with the Middle Eastern conflict. So there were doubts of many analysts that this would eventually happen with all this ongoing. But this is what regards the importance of China. Nobody's contesting it, that it's a vital player, one of the most important key players of the globe. But the visit itself has the meaning and has their long-standing vision, because we know that Putin and Xi, they met together more than 40 times.
Mm.
Uh, we know that this visit to China of Mr. Putin was 25th. I think nobody else has ever met between, like, Xi never met with anybody else, any other state leader with such a frequency and such amount of, times. And this is not just meeting at some multilateral organizations or mechanisms like the G20 or Brics or SCO or APEC, right? We know APEC is incoming in November as well in Shenzhen.
Mm.
But this is also the bilateral ties. And this proves that despite all their discussions of and turbulences of the globe that we are witnessing, we know that those relations remain weathered. They remain strategically linked because when the two leaders meet, they sign off what's already been agreed or kind of what or at some points was stalled by working contacts. But when they come, it's either a breakthrough or a massive new inflection of new agreements and also stability.
Mm.
That's see very often. I remember there was a couple months ago, there was a big China forum, development forum, where Chinese governments, its prime minister, they were saying that China is an island of stability in this global ocean of turbulence,
Mm. Mm.
and it applies to Russia-China relations as
Mm.
an island of stability where they can serve as a kind of uh, a beacon to which countries of the global south can strive to in order to see how the world could be arranged, how relations could function, how they can be functionable and mutually beneficial. So from all those points of view, I think the visit proves to be very important.
So China-Russia deepening its strategical cooperation by this visitor. But how you think that the world is facing the erosion of the law? I mean that there is a law of jungle, the term that used. So how China and Russia can uphold this risk that is faced by the United States towards the erosion of international law?
Uh, Unfortunately, this process has been quite lengthy, and China and Russia has grouped together with the other global South countries to try to counter this tendency. Um, it's still there. We still face even worse law of jungles. But as I said, the two countries are representing this island of stability. Besides, uh, when they meet either bilaterally or on a multilateral level, they're trying to push through ideas and projects that would be advantageous for all the sides, but also attractive for the countries of the outside of the circle, also from the West, by the way, for the people of the West, because elites of the West and people of the West, those are two different fractions. And I think, especially when we see the new technologies, the new areas which requires harmonization, which requires agreements between the countries in order to not to inflict even the bigger chaos, right? China and Russia can act with this ability, offer the momentum and offer ideas for legislation and for the rule of law to be kept not intact but to develop in line with the interests of different countries, not just of the one strong hegemon which US still tries to portray, or hegemon in small circle of its satellites. So from this point of view, be it Shanghai Cooperation Organization, be it Brics, they do work, albeit bilateral cooperation. They do work on a number of different harmonization, standardization, legal processing that would help establish a skeleton, or let's say provide for a firm skeleton when the world decides it wants to go back to stability, away from madness. And they will already have a foundation which is provided by both Russia and China.
Mhm. So this visit of President Putin is actually a few days ahead of this 25th anniversary of the signing of the treaty of the
Yeah.
friendly countries and their cooperation. So how you think that Russia and China could further strengthen this treaty by engaging the other neighbors countries to have good ties?
Well, first of all, when we look at just the bilateral, and I think both Xi and Putin, they mentioned that they are at the highest point, and in fact, each time they say it's at the highest point, so it continues to improve. Although, if you look at economy, it seems to be stabilizing. We now have about 245, I believe it was from 24. It was a bit lower last year, but still much, still around 250 billion US dollars trade turnover. And visa-free cooperation, visa-free visits to both countries, which was initiated by China and uptaken by Russia. And now they decided they want to continue on this. So Russia and China within this treaty, they not only serve as a stability examples for and show how to work together to the other countries, but also provide for a big amount of concrete, very concrete projects that would be beneficial for both sides. And that's why we see quite a lot of agreements. They were like, I think 44, I believe, documents altogether. The two big strategic ones signed this time, and then 42 other documents. which are in the area of education, in the area of industrial cooperation, economic cooperation, Rosatom, so in the nuclear energy, space energy. So it's I believe that this treaty is a framework one. It proved important as a foundation for their all those building blocks. The two countries continue to introduce in building their common edifice of their friendship, of their relationship, which seems the most solid ones in their, on their construction ground of today, which sees many ruins around. But with Russia, China, it's a strong edifice. It's adding, it's going higher. And that also attracts, be it Eurasian countries, be it the countries of the Brics, expanded Brics plus partner countries, the global South as a whole. So I think it serves as a good example because it offers benefits for both sides. It doesn't, Western countries, like Western media likes to point out, oh, there's over dependence of like China over like Russian energy or vice versa. Russia has been embraced by China because of this conflict, because of Ukraine, or then vice versa because of Middle East. But those are different principles on which our relations are based. They're based on mutual trust, on mutual benefits, and on offering this new momentum to other states as well. That's why I believe, be it APEC in Shenzhen, be it BRICS summit that is going to be in September in India, but usually, no matter who is their president, who is presiding, who is the chair of the current year, Russia and China, they are providing for a very big input, and they usually contact closely within multilateral frameworks as well. So from this view, I think it's quite a breakthrough.
Okay, so when it comes to the multilateralism and the multilateral organization, so the US is trying to striking it down, the multilateral organization. But we saw that China and Russia has been quite engaging into the organization who promote multilateralism. So how you see the potential in BRICS, SCO, and Global South in terms of this rising multipolar world order? So how you think this multilateralism potential in these organizations?
Well, for me, in fact, BRICS is probably the key role model nowadays for their incoming revised, not totally new, at least till because BRICS is not a revisionist structure. BRICS is evolutionary, not revolutionary. BRICS are willing to introduce and agree on the rules of the game that are not against any other third power, even or third group of powers, even outside of the BRICS domain. And with their current situation, when we see the Western countries, United States and Europe, trying to dictate others, this is a much better, much more attractive alternative. And I believe this is when multilateralism is working, not as a war of all against all, as is often portrayed. And that's why some especially American and Western analysts say, well, multilateralism is bad because it's less stable. We'd rather have a hegemon or even bilateral relations, which would provide more, one or two powers that would be stabilizing the whole international landscape. But the multilateralism that BRICS is introducing, it is literally more stable and more fulfilling from this point of view, because it does take into account interests of their states within the BRICS domain and outside the BRICS domain. It's very open, it's very inclusive, and it allows for negotiations not to stop, but this way to be, yes, long, sometimes very laborious, actually always very laborious, but this ensures that they are long-term. They don't go away with whatever new wind coming. So those are their ideas that would be weathered and that would stay after whatever crisis will be over, and they would serve as a model. They are now already serving as a model to the many countries in the world, and I believe they would provide for the core of this new system, not instead of the United Nations. So although we don't know how the United Nations would work with all their, United States and its allies exiting some of their key institutions of the family of the UN, for example, or doing other very, let's say, things counter to, in fact, to break the multilateral institutional system that was built throughout the past 50 years. And I think BRICS, with their support of the existing institutions, existing institutional framework, but with the desire to make evolutionary changes with the new acceptable for all methods of cooperation, that would be much better interest and alternative for the rest of the world. So they would provide for the core of this new global system.
So let's come to Iran, because that is also one of the major, I think, issue in the region. And recently, I think a few hours ago, Israel Prime Minister have given some hint that they are preparing for another strike on Iran. So Vladimir Putin is here, and Russia has a quite clear stance on Iran. Sergei Lavrov has given a statement that Iran have the right to have the nuclear weapons. And after that, we saw that Donald Trump also have some very strong rhetoric. So how you see Russia position towards Iran? And during this meeting between Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, do you think that Iran would be under discussion?
Well, it's likely that whatever crisis that's now on the hands of their global leaders will be discussed, because Iran, it's part of the BRICS. Iran is a strategic partner for both countries. I believe China is dependent, at least was dependent, about 35% of its oil supplies going through Hormuz, Strait of Hormuz.
Yeah.
And energy continues to be important factor in bilateral and multilateral relations in the area of economic development, of unhampered economic development of China. I believe it will be discussed, but in fact, I'm not sure that Lavrov was interpreted right about saying that Iran has the right for nuclear weapons because Russia is the side to the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT. But definitely what is maintained as a Russia's position, official position, that Iran has the full right for the peaceful nuclear program.
Indeed.
And I believe that one of their suggestions on the table, at least if you look at their records, that the idea that Iran was ready to store its enriched uranium in Russia. So because the continuation of the hostilities against Iran and their threat of using not just conventional weaponries, but also of the nuclear weaponries, which Israel is in fact threatening to do from time to time, very regularly, is a threat to peace, not just for the Middle East, and threat to existence, not of just Middle East, but to the humanity as a whole. And we know that this rhetoric is very highly disliked by both Russia and China, and they are definitely ready to do what's needed in order to bring sides back to diplomacy and to ensure that not only their economic interests are not hampered, but also that their stability is back to the Middle East, because it's one of their Middle East is the house of partner countries, of countries, member countries of BRICS, but it's also strategic partners of both states. So I believe this would be on the agenda. Probably they will, as leaders, which sometimes very often happens, would be able to suggest some innovative approach of how this conflict could be resolved, or what kind of. I'm not sure they would do. I do not expect any, let's say, joint action or joint stance of the two countries, but they would, I'm quite sure they would deliberate on coordination of their steps towards mitigating the risk of the Middle Eastern flare-up.
Thank you very much, Victoria Panova. I really appreciate your insight and your deep analysis on Mr. Putin's visit to China, and also about the Iran situation. Thank you so much joining me from Moscow.
Thank you, Malik. Thank you. It was good to talk to you.
My pleasure. My pleasure.